Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Candice and Elisa show. As you guys know, we love looking at, the human nature through the lens of what's currently happening in our world. And Elisa and I discovered a story which has actually been running for quite a while, but it's the first time a documentary's been made about it. And that is the Woody Allen situation with his stepdaughter. And so I believe the documentary is called Allen vs. Farrow, that is being released in 4 parts on HBO, which highlights both the accounts of what had happened and what had transpired. And of course, there are a lot of people who are either Team Allen or Team Farrow. And it brings us to the discussion about when people speak out or when accusations are made, any kind of accusations within the world, how people respond to it without any evidence. I think we all choose a moral side without really knowing the details of the events. And so, Elisa, what did this invoke in you? What did you feel when you saw, or when you read about this documentary?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, obviously, this has been a story that I've been following since 2014 when Dylan Farrow came out about this and everything. And obviously with the Me Too movement, it all got kind of convoluted with Harvey Weinstein and Hollywood and all this kind of thing. I have not watched the documentary, so I can't actually speak to it because it's been released in the US, but I'm very curious about it. And the one thing that I will say is it's just these kinds of actions, these kinds of situations, and it's not just sexual violence, it's just so many things. They become he said, she said situations. And it all boils down to people choosing a side or becoming ambivalent. And I think at the moment, we do live in a society where we are looking to crucify someone. We want to hang someone to pay for sins because we're all carrying masses of pain on our shoulders, right? And by no means am I undermining that what happened very well might have happened, but I can't know. And it's the same with my situation. Unless somebody was in the room with a camera or there were witnesses, nobody will know except for me and my abuser, right? And so I am of the tendency of wanting to obviously believe the survivor, to believe the victim, because I think even though there are false accusations, I mean, we are human, and it's not just in sexual violence, but in any crime, there are false accusations from all genders. But yeah, I think certainly something that I can almost tie into things that we've spoken about before with the storming of Capitol and the Black Lives Matter. We need to crucify somebody, and hopping on that bandwagon, even if you haven't done your research at all. You just see one comment on social media and you're very quick to go, yes, we are going to crucify this person. And I think that's the part that for me is very delicate that we need to watch out for at the moment, because we're all short fused. So I don't know. I mean, what your thoughts are on this?
I think what you touched on is actually where I currently am. I look at the work I do, right? And of course, I encounter a lot of people in different positions, and just purely based on the industry I'm in, and actually the industry we're both in. And so when I form connections and relationships with these people, of course, you end up following them on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. When news happens about them, you're much more in tune with what's happening than you would be otherwise. And I've seen on so many occasions that people I know personally, and I'm not going to vouch for them on a moral standing, but where allegations are made simply out of the blue, with no fact, with no hindrance, with just someone randomly tweeting the words, especially now, and it's driving me insane. Maybe someday we will discuss insert famous person's name, sexual abuse allegations or whatever, or insert whatever, fraud, whatever. And then people just take that and they don't fact check, they don't Google, they just outrage. They take this one random human being statement and they just act out of sheer outrage. And then, of course, when it gains enough traction and momentum, it either reaches the person whose reputation is now being damaged and muddied, or it ends up in the news or on the tabloids or whatever it may be. And I look at that culture, that what I find the most fascinating about those people is when their facts aren't proven. When the allegations actually hold no water, they scurry away like little cockroaches. They don't issue statements. They're not like, I am deeply regretful, I'm so apologetic about what I said. They resume with life as normal. And the person whose life they've really impacted is left having to pick up the pieces, right? And I almost think as humanity, are we losing our humanity due to social media? Are we not looking at people as people anymore? If someone is in your living room every day, or if you've got access to someone in a way that's not personal to you, but you know them through social media or whatever, do we then feel so entitled to another human being's life that we're okay with damaging their reputation without any repercussions? And that's where I'm kind of standing right now. You know, when it comes to accusations of any kind, it's like, I'm so afraid to react very quickly. I want to do my research. I want to sit back and I want to see. And of course, I also lean more towards the victim, because I also believe victims have tons to lose when they come out. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. Social media is kind of making me a little pessimistic about human nature at this time.
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword, because on one level, I think it has been established numerous times that social media, you know, when people are not seeing your face sometimes, you know, you can be anyone, you know, the talking parrot has just said, and it's like, you can hide behind anonymity of any sort and put anything out there with zero repercussion for yourself, right? You can be completely anonymous, and you can watch the snowball, you know, you can watch heads roll, and maybe for some people it becomes very like, oh, look, they caught on, you know, and it's like, you know, I still wonder, you know, all of the QAnon followers, and, you know, when somebody started talking about Jewish lasers from space and all this stuff, you just kind of go, seriously, guys, like, please, like, can we please just take one moment to think about it? And then the massive disappointment, you know, when Trump loses the election, all this kind of stuff, and people going like, but I believe this, and people coming out and going like, I actually thought that Anderson Cooper would eat children or eat babies, and I actually thought, and you kind of go, Jesus, like, how gullible are we at that level? Or how desperate are we to find a crowd, to find people that go, yes, I'm with you on this, I completely believe it. On the other side of that, there's also the whole issue of a culture of silence. It's almost like in social media we have verbal diarrhea of sorts with no consequence, and then in organizations, and, you know, even in the film world and journalism and all these different business, whatever, there are institutionalized cultures of silence where you might see something that's going on and it's a bit weird, and even though we've had Me Too, and even though we've had all these people come out, there are still massive repercussions to people making a stance for something, especially in this case, for example, with Woody Allen. You're going up one of the best film directors of our time. So, you know, that takes a lot of guts. Like, it takes a lot of energy, because the backlash is also going to be immense for you as someone coming out, right? So it's complicated.
Yeah, it is a double-edged sword. And I think, you know, sometimes, you know, one can be looked at like, you know, I mean, I like to think that, you know, you and I emanate like, you know, like, yeah, we empowered and strong, and, you know, we project this image into the world of like, yeah, because we're very vocal, right? We tend to be very vocal about things that are happening and so on and so forth. But I mean, even in my own experience, I've had experiences with powerful people where even now, like, I would not say their names necessarily, you know, because the experience maybe wasn't as severe, or it wasn't as dramatic for me to risk, you know, the complete tornado that would become my life if I chose to say their names. Because then having to prove that, how do you prove that someone solicited you? How do you prove that, you know, you were made to feel uncomfortable? How do you prove that you were led into like a false trap, you know? And all these things. I mean, I was never sexually assaulted, so, you know, I want to put that on the table. However, all these things that I experienced were in the direction of that. And fortunately, and I will use those words very, you know, deliberately, very fortunately, that there were always ways out for me. You know, I always either had like the assistant outside, or a call that would come in, or someone who saw something off. And even to this day, I'm like, I can't, because nothing really happened within the severity of what could have happened had I not escaped those situations. It's almost like, what am I going to say? So-and-so, who's this huge powerhouse, at least within this context, solicited me. And people would be like, oh, women don't know how to take a compliment. Trust me, I'm a very intellectual and smart woman. I don't mind a compliment. If anything, I love a compliment. Like, I don't care if you're a builder or a CEO or the sweeper. Like, you compliment me, honey, my day is made. But there's a huge difference. And I think that's the thing, right? Women are made to feel at times that you don't know how to decipher, as if we're too stupid to know what is going to endanger you versus what is just complimentary and is safe, right? Because I've walked into meetings in, boardrooms and in companies where it was just men, and all of them would maybe compliment me, or half the room would compliment me, or they'd make like maybe sexist jokes, and I don't mind it. I find it fun at times. I will joke back because I don't feel unsafe in those particular moments or environments, and I can read the room. The energy of the room isn't saying any of these men are trying to hurt me, but there is an energy of a room where you walk in and you're like, there's something going on here that I know is going to endanger my safety and myself. And that is why every time a woman comes out, or a person, I don't want to call it women, a person comes out and says, I have been assaulted, you've got to trust the fact that unless they're really psychopathic, and unless they really, want to see the world burn, or they're after some, like, a huge amount of money or whatever it may be, what they're putting on the line is far more. Because every time a victim comes out, and I want us to remember this, every time a victim comes out in any shape or form, their whole life, when you Google that person, is of the victim of that other individual. They are forever tied to that person. And so who on earth wants to be Googled? You go on a date, you go for a job interview, and the first thing they see about you is an assault that happened. And now that's the thing they're going to mark you on. That's the thing they're going to want to talk about. So I think it is very difficult when we cover topics like this, because these are the nuanced experiences that so many victims face.
I actually was like, ooh, I felt that one. It's funny because, like, I remember when I was coming out, and when I was the first time I came out online was when I was releasing my Kickstarter campaign for my exhibition on rape. And I just kind of kept going, like, my name's going to be tied to this word. What if people find out? I'm like, now everybody that knows me, like, I'm so open about this, but it's like, yeah, when you Google my name, it's probably the first thing that's going to come up. And, it has actually closed some doors in the corporate world, where I might be navigating with a company and they're like, well, we can't stand for this project, or we can't really support this because it's just a bit too much. Like, perhaps if you'd called it like sexual violence, but because it's the word rape, it's just a bit too much for us. So no thanks.
Yeah.
And it will shut some doors, which is shocking to me, considering how much this happens. But also what you were saying, I mean, I think that notion of following our gut and our intuition, since we're young, we are finding ways to deny that, to say, no, not true, like whatever. And I think learning to be really clear on how we feel and how we're perceiving a space and the room and people. It's so fascinating what you've said, these things have happened to me, but because they weren't that serious, how do I even navigate coming out about it, considering the storm? And what's really interesting about that is, like, people don't just wake up one morning and start to be rapists, right? I see it as like, there are stepping stones. Yeah, sure, there'll be some that just went for it, but there's stepping stones. It's layered. It's like, maybe he or she made someone feel uncomfortable a little, and they got away with that. Nothing happened, no consequence. So next time I can do it again, and a little more and a little more. At what point do we go, this is worth opening up about? And I wouldn't be surprised if, like, you probably, if I was going to meet with this person or one of your friends, you might go in private, you might go, oh, just, watch your back, cuz.
Oh, 100%.
But the notion that you speaking openly about this experience could create a backlash for you, which it would, right, is just part of the problem of the construct that we're in, because we cannot say it's not valid until it's like, it was a rape, or it was a childhood abuse, or it was something. It has to be freaking bombastic with like neon shining lights for it to be something that I feel comfortable enough expressing. It makes it valid, if you will, you know what I mean? And that's so hard.
And also, like, as you were speaking, the word that came to mind is responsibility. All of a sudden, you speak out about your experience and you become responsible for, having to follow through on this case, and having to take this person to court, and having to make public statements, and having to constantly be interviewed about the situation. And all of a sudden you become a spokesperson for something that was a trauma to you, but no one really looks at it, because now you're a news story, right? Because, like, as the saying in our industry goes, if it bleeds, it leads. And if you have a powerful enough name, right? And you want to speak out against this person, when your experience wasn't as severe and you really aren't looking for that justice, you're just looking to never work with that person again or never to be in a room with that person, it really doesn't, what you're going to get in terms of media backlash and questioning and digging into your character. Oh, may we not forget, now we're in a time where women should be believed and women have to, or people or victims are believed. But before we are believed, best believe that our past, every ex-boyfriend you've ever had, every ex-partner is being interviewed, your family's being interrogated, your school teachers, what kind of a student was she? Was she good with the boys? Did boys find her flirtatious? Did she date well? How was she in bed? Like, it's all these incredibly tarnishing things. I mean, we saw it with the vice president of the United fucking States. And Kamala, before she even stepped into office, guess what we knew? Who she dated, who she, had relations with, and how we can credit all these exes that she had for her being where she is in life. And so when you come up as a victim to these moments, what tends to happen is, and I've thought about these things because I thought, oof, I hope that he's not doing these things. I hope because it's been quite a few men of power, I hope they're not doing this to anyone else. But then at the same time, it's like, if I had to speak out, what's going to happen is, if they're strong enough in their public reputation at that time, and because I'm not saying it's a sexual violence assault, then what's going to happen is, how did she get to where she is in her life? Maybe the story of forgiveness is really not that powerful. Did she sleep her way to the top, right? So all these things become people's and we hate to admit it. We hate to admit it. Oh, not me. I'm morally righteous. No, you're not. Because if you look at a woman who you perceive to be attractive or young or whatever they label us as when we become these news stories. Oh, but she was so attractive. Oh, but she wears dresses all the time. Oh, she's very flirtatious in personality, right? They use words that don't come across as attacking and biting, but they know actually diminish your character, right? And so then you as an individual have to start defending who you are in order to be believed enough and have enough credibility. And with me and all my accolades and achievements and all these, I still am not in a position where I can come against these people because I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? My life would be considered built with sticks and stones at this stage, considering that they built on concrete, right? They've had years of experience. They've got the best PR agency, best lawyers. They're probably connected to president. And now I'm just coming out like, guys, I'm a forgiveness girl. And this person did this to me. Oh, hell no. And so that's why I get almost so infuriated when people create these fake narratives that shifts our attention when they're really real situations we should be focusing on.
Yeah, because at that stage, you could very easily be, especially when you're at that point in your career where you're headed somewhere and you're not quite at the top yet, and you're, and it's like, oh, is she attention seeking for marketing strategy? That it's like, it starts to become all confused. But then when you use the word responsibility, I also felt, at what point do we have a responsibility to speak out about this stuff and take the grunt? Because imagine a world where we actually all did that. And I'm not just talking about sexual violence. I'm talking about you're walking down the street and you see something happen that's wrong and you actually call that out. And I don't mean go and punch someone. I just say call that out. And that you could feel okay and safe enough that somebody's not going to retaliate physically with you, because it's just so understood that if you're doing something that's shady or dicey or inadequate, somebody's going to call you out and you're going to go, actually, dude, that's not okay. We're not there yet. And we try to pretend like we are. And, oftentimes in social media, it's much easier to hop on someone else's bandwagon than actually just analyze your own. It's like, they've gone wrong and they're whatever, and I'm just being moral and whatever. But it's like, okay, what have you done? So, I mean, certainly,
that's it.
As always, this is a conversation that I think we could easily carry on for days and days. And guys, we'd love to hear your opinion, because this is something that we're all a part of. If you're listening to this, you're a part of social media, you're a part of the online world, and you're seeing how we're all evolving in all of these directions. So if you have any comments, ideas, things that you'd like to share, or even topics that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please let us know. And Candice, I don't know if you want to add anything else?
Oh, no, there's nothing to add, because if I start adding, we're going to be here for another hour.
Cool.
But yeah, I think it's tweet responsibly. I think that's the only thing I'll say. Tweet responsibly. That's it.
Tweet, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media. Do it responsibly. Take some responsibility for yourself. And yeah, we look forward to chatting to you next week.
Take care, guys.